Once the injury has been recognized and the person has been removed from any activities that could risk aggravating their symptoms, the next step for the individual is to manage their recovery journey. However, the individualized nature of this process makes the approach different for everyone. When looking at the story of Caleb Duquetto, who suffered his concussion the summer going into his final year of high school, the struggles he experienced when returning to learn were extremely difficult to manage.
Found just going into the school and all the lights and all the people around was really overwhelming and caused me to have a headache after a short time.
What Caleb experienced is not uncommon and is a result of the non-linear process that recovering from a brain injury is often associated with.
Sometimes you feel like I'm almost there. And then a few days later, you'll be right back where you were a month ago.
According to the American Psychological Association, this means that there isn't a step-by-step process to guide an individual, but rather, it's a process that is based on continual growth, occasional setbacks, and experiential learning, which is something that family physician Dr. Steph Dallaire is conscious of when he works to help kids and teens recover from a concussion.
Put on top of that, the social component. When am I going to catch up on that exam? Did I lose my starting position? All of those weigh into the anxiety and depression.
The challenges students and young athletes face go beyond managing just their concussion symptoms, as the recovery process can also impact one's mental health as well.
Having to take breaks from things is hard in itself. Sometimes people think oh, no school, that's great. But yeah, not being able to really see anybody or really do anything, that was super hard.
Caleb is not alone in facing these challenges. In fact, according to the National Institute of Health, approximately 1 in 5 individuals may experience mental health symptoms up to 6 months after receiving a mild traumatic brain injury, otherwise known as a concussion.
That's why we want to get people back to class, back on the field, back on the ice. Back in the change room is actually more important, okay? And knowing where your boundaries are, at first, maybe it's 10 minutes, and after that, it's that sound is too much, the lights are too bright, I can't do this. But we also want to support them and have them around. That goes a long way with the mental health components.
As Dr. Dallaire mentions, showing support for someone with a concussion can really help them manage their mental health throughout the recovery journey. And this supportive approach might be more important than we realize.
You need to pull that person to every team event, even if they can only last for 5 minutes. Just make them feel that they're on the team, make them feel welcome, make them feel, that they're still there.
Mike Keating grew up playing hockey with the late Steve Montador and saw firsthand what multiple concussions did to his childhood friend.
After seeing, a best friend go through what he went through mentally, it would be, you can't put yourself in the person's shoes. You don't have any idea what they're thinking. And then as soon as they stop caring about themselves, they don't know they're not caring about anyone else. So that's a really, really tough thing to go through, especially as, being so close to someone.
The various challenges that an individual experiences throughout the recovery process can be difficult to manage and often alienates them from their teammates and classmates, which is something Laura Young encountered during her recovery.
I did approach one of my best friends when I had severe anxiety and depression and just told her that I needed her. And she told me that they don't have time to check in on me anymore, that they're too busy doing other things and getting to know other people. And I will never, ever forget that.
It is this lack of understanding at a peer-to-peer level that can accentuate one's mental health complications and leave them feeling more isolated than ever before.
That age group is really interesting because there's not always that understanding of what the injury is. You see all kinds of people have big hits in sports and then get up and be fine. And then you have someone who has, a milder, what looks like a milder impact or injury, who have significant symptoms. And friends often don't understand.
Vice Principal Nunzella Hobson believes we can change the perception peers have towards this injury, and it starts by normalizing these conversations at school.
That if we normalize having those conversations, then their peers will understand that, okay, the school has recognized this, they have protocols around this, and therefore I need to be much more supportive to my peers.
Talking about concussions in a school environment is integral for the destigmatization of this invisible injury. But the conversation can't end here. There also needs to be accountability in the community, and Mike understands just how important it is to support someone with a concussion, which is why, alongside other childhood friends, they launched HOPE in Peterborough.
We came up with HOPE, helping others participate equally, because all we want to do is kind of give back to our community.
One of the incredible things HOPE has established in Peterborough is an annual Steve Montador Scholarship for students recovering from a concussion, one that Caleb received last year.
Being chosen for that is really special. Not only the money element of it, but also it was just a boost to know that people care.
That's what the scholarship's for, to help these kids, pursue what they want, whatever goal that is, obviously a post-secondary education, and make it easier.
Research actually supports this community approach in Peterborough and suggests that social support may play a positive role in concussion recovery and help with anxiety, community integration, and validation towards this invisible injury.
Students who don't have that type of support around them are at a higher risk of having those prolonged symptoms. So we know how important that is.
When we magnify the experience of a student returning to a school environment, we learn that support is an essential component to managing the recovery, and the role teachers can play to help with this is crucial.
They know that student's baseline. They know what they normally can produce and what they are like prior to an injury, and they will try and fill in the gap and allow that student that latitude, that space, in order to start to heal and be able to come back to that learning space as healthy as possible.
Teachers have a huge role on all three, social, academic, and athletics, right? So they're a set of very valuable eyes to both parents and to a physician as to where are we at? How are things going?
While managing their return to learn, students will often require accommodations based on their symptom threshold. But this can bring its own form of stigmatization because oftentimes their peers don't understand why they are receiving special treatment.
When you're at school, having to take breaks is kind of humiliating because people may not understand exactly how you're feeling.
I was also exempt from my exams in high school because my headaches were so severe that I wasn't able to sit that long for a test. And I'll never forget one of my best friends saying to me, "Oh, I really wish I was you. You're so lucky you're getting out of this." And I remember just going and crying and thinking, I would trade your life any day for mine because the pain I go through every day is not worth writing one exam.
The accommodation piece is vital. On day 2 of a significant concussion, you can't go write an exam. That's not fair. And it's not actually measuring what your knowledge is.
The truth is, measuring a student's capabilities after they've experienced a concussion is a big challenge our educational system faces. But Vice Principal Hobson explains that there are ways in which the school environment can evolve in their assessment.
Assess achievement in multiple ways. You don't have to use every way. And so reducing, monitoring, and honoring the fact that the student may or may not be able to function at the same level for a week, 2 weeks, and that's okay.
So when we look at the different components of a student's recovery, an important thing to understand is how to manage the stress one encounters throughout the non-linear process.
Identify, what are my worries? And it's hard to do that sometimes. Like, what am I actually stressed about? And you can write them down. I'm worried about my academics. I'm worried about this exam. I'm worried that this project in particular, because maybe that works into that big plan of, okay, let's problem solve here. What is reasonable and not reasonable?
As a result, it becomes quite difficult to create an ideal management strategy for a person dealing with the injury, as our approach is constantly evolving and has to change on a case-by-case basis.
You have to push it a little bit. That helps with that recovery. So day 1, you take it easy. Day 2, if you're feeling up to it, you get on a treadmill and you walk for 15 minutes and you see how that goes. And you don't push it. And if it feels good, you don't keep going, you stop. But the next day we're like, hey, that went pretty well, and my symptoms weren't aggravated too much. So you don't just lay on the couch and do nothing for 5 days. That's not helpful, and you're actually gonna be hindered.
So whether we're managing our own recovery process or helping others with a concussion, it's important to remember
Really honor the fact that you have an injury, that a brain injury really truly is something that has happened to you, and that you need to honor the fact that you need time to heal.
Talk to your friends about how you're feeling. Just do it. It's amazing how much that can help this type of thing.
How do you feel today? That's all you have to ask. And they'll tell you.
It goes a long way.
Absolutely. That one line I probably used on Monty a million times. So it's one of those things where you really need to listen, I feel.